Hey, James here. So I'm responding to your video to TJ and his views on feminism, because let's face it, it's very unlikely he's going to see this video and respond himself. I think that you've got a lot of things in your video just outright wrong, and hopefully you'll be able to see that by the end of this. Now, if there's any particular claims I've made during this video which you'd like a source for, and I haven't left them down below, then please, by all means, let me know in the comments section, and I'll add them to it. I'd just also like to clear up my views on feminism before I get started with this properly, and that is that I'm against the ideology. I see it as very harmful. But I'm not against the individuals, and I think that that's a very important clarification to make. There's many moderate feminists who I don't have a problem with. There's some who are genuine egalitarians. There's some who I like as people, but they're simply a bit misguided. It's the ideology which I have a problem with, and one of my biggest gripes is that they seem to be incapable of cleaning house. If they could, then I would have no problem with the ideology, but I see it as somewhat of an impossibility now. With that being said, as an intro, let's get on with it.
Hey everyone, Ian Clark here on the 515, remembering why I usually have a beer.
And I shall be drinking my anti-feminist coffee.
Oh well. So The Amazing Atheist recently uploaded a video. It was called Feminism versus Free Speech, and it was essentially the latest in what is becoming somewhat of an ongoing saga of videos that kind of follow the format of find something stupid that a feminist has said or done, and then unrelentingly beat everyone the fuck over the head with it for about a week and a half. Or until you find something crazier that a feminist said or did, and then unrelentingly beat everyone the fuck over that for a week and a half.
I think it's pretty unfair to say that it's an ongoing trend. He's done 2 videos out of his last 9 which have been making fun of feminism, and really that doesn't seem any different to what he's always done. He's found stupid people and made fun of them, and they just happen to have been feminists in those cases. If you want to go back before that, you have to go back 6 months before you find another video by him about feminism. So, yeah, hardly an ongoing trend, and it's not really any different to what he's always been doing.
But anyway, this kind of video has been made popular by The Amazing Atheist, his protege Mr. Repsion, and of course Thunderfoot, who I'm still kind of waiting on to just acknowledge that this is kind of what he does now. Because it's been 3.5 months since he's done a video on religion, and it's not like his channel's not been active. He's been uploading plenty of videos, just most of them, if they're not straightforward science videos, have been about feminism. And by the way, the quotation marks around feminism disappeared, and now that he's doing stuff about feminist frequency and Donglegate, it's not even about atheism anymore. It's just straightforward criticizing feminism.
Speaking as someone who isn't a particularly huge fan of Thunderfoot, I do think that that's just the way Thunderfoot's channel operates. Now, I've been on YouTube for 2.5, 3 years now, and during that time I've seen Thunderfoot spend a big period of time talking about creationism and specifically Christianity. Then he shifted his focus onto Islam for quite a long period. Now he's shifted it onto feminism, and during that time he's had science videos between all of those videos. So, I mean, that's not really any different to how he's always operated. And I think that criticising feminism should just as much be a part of skepticism as criticising conspiracy theories and alternative health.
Which, I mean, it's his right to do, but at least kind of maybe acknowledge that the channel content has shifted a little bit. But anyway, yeah, so The Amazing Atheist uploaded this video, and the upshot of it all is that an incident occurred on the University of Toronto campus in which 2 campus groups, actually, although TJ only acknowledges one of them, hosted a guest speaker who was an MRA, and campus feminists lost their shit, and one of them pulled the fire alarm and had the whole thing shut down. Now, I'm going to just throw this out there. It is a dick move to pull a fire alarm to silence somebody, and it's a criminal act and should be treated as such, and those responsible should be prosecuted. But that is the extent of it. The rest of the video the TJ presents is really an extremely reductionist, extremely agendaed, and extremely, in some cases, just plain factually inaccurate portrayal of the events as they occurred. It starts off with the description of the video. He says, "Radical feminists pull fire alarm to silence critics." Now, if you watch the video clip, you can see when the fire alarm goes off, and the crowd of feminists cheers the fire alarm going off. But to actually say radical feminists, plural, pull the fire alarm, there's no evidence that this was pre-planned. In fact, it really, based on the surprised reaction of the crowd, if it is still somewhat sort of a joyous surprise, it seems to indicate that no one else there had any idea that that was going to happen. But even
yeah, it's an assumption to assume they were the ones responsible for pulling the alarm, but it seems like a pretty reasonable one. Now, just because they looked surprised that the alarm took place, the alarm went off, that doesn't mean that it wasn't pre-planned. They might not have known the exact second that the alarm was going to be pulled. I mean, alarms, by their very nature, tend to be kind of alarming. Even if it wasn't one of them who pulled the alarm, or it wasn't pre-planned and one of them just did it off the spur of the moment, it still paints the rest of them in a pretty bad light when they're cheering that an illegal action took place on their behalf, which they thought was going to simply silence their critics.
And the to silence critics part is kind of suspect, because he seems to be creating this impression, or trying to at the very least. This is simply an example of feminists can't handle any dissenting viewpoint, anything that's not feminism. They simply have to shut out and drown out and kill. And that would again rely on the claim that this group and the lectures that they were putting on and the guest speaker that they brought in and everything like this was strictly on the up and up, and that it simply wasn't feminist, and that this was the only objection that they had to it.
So yeah, you try and justify what they did in a minute, and I will get to that, but first I'd just like to mention briefly feminism's long history of blocking dissenting opinion. My friend Swayno Pye had his van smashed up 3 times over the course of one summer. Erin Prizzy, the founder of the women's shelter industry, she had her dog killed and had death threats sent to her because she pointed out that women could be just as violent as men. There's another men's meeting which got shut down because the fire alarm got set off a few years back, which I'll try and find the links to. Men's groups forming in colleges, the feminists have protested against those forming, and shelters, domestic violence shelters for men. It's no coincidence that there's over 4,000 shelters for men for women in the UK, and only 15 for men, which is about 20 times less than there are shelters for dogs. Just so you've got some perspective there. On YouTube, you've got Anita Sarkeesian, you've got those pesky dames who will set their comments to approval only, or block them altogether. I had my comment removed on another feminist blog recently for pointing out the flaws in one of the studies they presented, and I was extremely polite about it. Free Thought blogs and Atheism Plus, they'll block anybody who doesn't toe the party line. And yes, they will try and justify their actions. They will say that the people they blocked are trolls, and they'll say that they're misogynists, and they'll basically use anything they can in order to slander the people who they ended up blocking. So yes, feminism does have an extensive history of doing that, and that's far from an exhaustive list.
Unfortunately is not the case. Now, I can't really speak on the speaker who was brought there that night because I'm not that familiar with him, but I can speak on the greater context of what the discussions were. It was actually a series of lectures put on by 2 groups. The one that he mentions is Cafe. Now, I can't really say that much about Cafe themselves either because I'm not particularly familiar, but I kind of get the impression that TJ isn't either, because he proudly proclaims that he has searched their entire website and he has found proof that they are a gender equality group. They are not a pro-men's rights group. They're not women-hating in any way or anything like that. And his proof is their mission statement, which he points to and says, look how many times it says equality, which is reasoning that I have to believe he would laugh at if he was trying to apply it to a feminist group. Because how many radical feminist groups proclaim themselves to be pro-gender equality? But
I have looked over Cafe's website myself. They do very clearly seem to be a men's rights group, but they don't seem to be men's rights at the expense of women's rights or anything like that. I have to wonder at this point, do you actually understand how the burden of proof works? What do you want TJ to do? Do you want him to make a 10-hour-long video going over all of the source material on the Cafe website? It's not up to TJ and it's not up to Cafe to prove that they're not misogynists. That's not how the burden of proof works. The people with the burden of proof are the ones claiming that Cafe is misogynistic. So, yeah, and in TJ's own words,
does this group sound radical to anyone? I mean, okay, the feminist argument is that this is just their safe-sounding front, but if you really dig deeper into the organization, you'll find the scathing misogyny. Well, I have dug deeper, and I invite other people to do so as well. EqualityCanada.com. Go there, check it out for yourself. I challenge you to find something misogynistic in the group's literature, in their videos, anywhere.
But then the second group was most definitely very specifically, very explicitly, statedly a men's rights organization.
So?
And furthermore, this was part of an ongoing series of lectures. There have been at least two others. One featured a professor from the University of Ottawa who maintained that there was some sort of an attempt to instill an anti-male bias into the humanities, and that feminism and gender studies was doing this, which I could speak on, or I could not speak on. I don't think I'm quite educated in the subject enough, other than to say that I was in the humanities in a Canadian university for 2 years, and I didn't really notice. But
and clearly, some universities are far better than other ones. I can't comment on where you went because I don't know where that is, but I do know of an awful lot with extremely strong radical feminism biases. The University of Toronto is definitely one. You've got the UCL in London. I'll leave a link to a video I did about those down below. You've got people like Gale Dines in America, who's an extreme anti-porn radical feminist. Now, a lot of these universities, they'll pump out extremely shoddy, intentionally biased research. They'll use self-selected opinion polls and other dishonest tactics to basically perpetuate female victimhood. Now, this is the only way that they can justify their existence. It's the only way that they can justify their existence and get money. If these people really weren't the majority, then you'd have huge groups of moderate feminists coming along and saying, hey, these people don't represent feminism. We want these people out of the universities, and we want someone more sane in place. The fact is, when it comes to the universities, when it comes to people who influence private and public policy, they are almost exclusively radical, or justify the radicals' behaviour with their silence.
But anyway, that's a much more complex topic than the other speaker who had come before, who had maintained that a man should not go to jail for raping a woman provided she kissed him first. This was not something that he just kind of sprung at that lecture. This was actually something that he'd been saying for years. So it needs to be established that it was actually the lecture series that was being protested, not necessarily the individual lecture itself. So when you consider this was actually part of an ongoing lecture series that had previously pretty unapologetically featured a pretty despicable rape apologist, maybe it's a bit more than simply a dissenting opinion. Maybe it's actually... maybe these groups actually do have a little bit to answer for.
I am going to have to ask for a citation for that. I don't think that you are being intentionally dishonest. You don't strike me as that sort of person. but I think that somebody you've listened to or somebody you've been talking to has basically lied to you. I hear all sorts of accusations against Warren Farrel. Not once has any one of them been substantiated, and when I have been provided links like, oh, it's in this book, etc., it's been an absolutely outrageous straw man, or just completely quote mine. So yeah, please provide a citation for that.
And it's also worth mentioning that if TJ is going to try to maintain that there are the good guys and the bad guys in this scenario, it should be pointed out that at previous lectures, the website of Voice for Men was actually taking pictures of the protesters, hosting them on their website, and then tracking down their personal information. But he then goes,
even if you were completely 100% right about A Voice for Men, which you're not, and I'll get to that in a sec, A Voice for Men is not affiliated with CAFE or any of the speakers at the event, so that has absolutely nothing to do with it. Even if A Voice for Men was just a bunch of terrible, evil bastards, that would have no bearing on TJ's video, CAFE, or any of the speakers there. As it happens, I do know a bit about the website you're talking about. You're talking about register-her.com, which is owned by A Voice for Men. Now, what they don't do is they don't publish personal email addresses, phone numbers, or full addresses or anything like that. They've got city and the name and what they've done, which is so bad. Now, the vast majority of that website is people like false accusers of rape and people who've got away with domestic violence against men and that kind of thing. Things where if it was a man, there would already be registers for them anyway. In the bigot section, which is where all of the protesters who would be put on there are going to be, from everything I've seen, all of the information about them, which is pretty much just the name, the address, and what they did, comes from their personal Twitter feeds, which are public, or comes from their public blogs. So it's not really an invasion of privacy, it's more like organising all the bigots they can find into one easily accessible, searchable area.
Then goes on to show a bunch of video clips that purportedly show that, again, these feminists are crazy radicals who simply don't want to allow anyone else to speak. And unfortunately, a lot of them seem to be lacking context. The one video clip that he shows is of a woman calling a man rape apologist scum. And the man repeatedly maintains that he doesn't really have a side in this whole argument. He just wanted to watch someone speak. He just wanted to listen to all sides of the story. Now, she then raises the point of, well, why did you pay your money to go see this guy? To which he responds, I think he responded that he actually hadn't, that it was actually free. And her face kind of goes a little bit blue screen of death, and then she kind of quickly tries to recover with something like, well, you're still supporting him by growing the numbers of attendance or something like that.
No, she responded by shouting, "You're fucking scum," at his back as he is trying to get away with her.
You should be fucking ashamed of yourself. You're fucking scum. You are fucking scum. Fucking rape apologist, incest supporting, woman hating, fucking scum.
Is there someone else that can wait? Does she want to follow me?
Fucking scum. Yeah, just another.
I just want to listen to someone else's opinion. I'm not even on a side here. I just listen to as many people as I can.
You know what, though? Why would you pay money to fucking support a fucking rape apologist if you weren't fucking one?
I've never heard him say anything that was...
Well, it's fucking scum.
Now that, to me, doesn't seem to be her stating that anyone who's even willing to entertain the opinions that are not hers is a rape apologist scumbag, but rather it seems like she was just misinformed about whether or not the event was free. And then she tries to save face quite badly.
Now, I think you're flat out wrong there for a start, but even if even if she simply didn't know that the event was free, she deserves some level of responsibility there. Ignorance is no excuse. She seems to know enough to be able to determine that Warren Farrel is a rape apologist scum, so she could have at least researched the event she was actually protesting against. And if she had been misled about the event being free, then who told her that? Well, was it the MRAs telling them that they had to pay to get in, or was it some of the other feminists in the group who lied to her?
And then there's the clip which he purports to show the single least likable human being in the world, which is a very angry, bright red-haired woman yelling at somebody to shut the fuck up and let her talk. Now, from this brief half-second clip, she definitely...
You make it sound like he intentionally took a really short clip of her to make her look as ridiculous as he possibly could. He gave her 35 seconds out of an 8-minute video, which primarily wasn't even about her, and he linked to videos down below where you can hear her speak in a lot greater detail. So what's the problem there?
Definitely comes across as pretty unlikable and a little bit frothing at the mouth, but if you actually, as Happy Cappy pointed out, if you actually listen to the words that she's saying, it becomes pretty clear that she was responding to something. She starts talking about how feminists don't want to take all kids away from men and leave them with women, which would kind of seem to create the impression that somebody, whoever she was responding to, and whoever apparently kept interrupting her, was accusing her and all feminists of wanting to take kids away from men. Okay,
Personally, I don't think that insane woman even needs responding to. Why should someone bother responding to somebody who's going out of their way to be that obnoxious? I will anyway, though, since you think that it's really bad that nobody has. I'll get to that in a second. Another reason nobody commented on it was that at the same time as she was speaking, there was another more civil discussion going on. You know that it was at the same time because you can hear her shouting her mouth off in the background. I'll link to one video down below about that particular discussion. I'll link to a video by JordanOwen, actually, considering hopefully you'll consider him to be a neutral source, considering he doesn't even consider himself to be a men's rights activist. To respond to her points, though, she said, feminists don't want to take children away, that's part of the patriarchy. Okay, let's examine that as a scientific hypothesis. If it would logically follow that if men not having access to children is part of the patriarchy, then as patriarchy diminishes, i.e. as women get more representation in government, you would expect to see the amount of men with access to their children increase. This is not the case. As the amount of women in Parliament has increased, the amount of fatherless homes, so has the amount of fatherless homes. So either it's the opposite of what she's saying, and that patriarchy is keeping men with their children, or there is no effect, or there's simply no effect. Now, many feminist organisations have actually advocated for laws which tear children away from their fathers. The National Organisation for Women has advocated against joint custody for a start. So have many other feminist organisations. And I think it's dishonest to say that her and all feminists. No, we're talking about what the ideology as a whole has has tried to achieve, not individual activists. For example, I don't believe I even have to explain this. I am anti-feminism. I'm not anti-feminists. There are individual feminists which I like, which are rational, and don't advocate for discriminatory laws. To give you another example, Catholicism has led to an increase in AIDS in Africa by convincing large portions of their population that they shouldn't use condoms. I can be against the Catholic ideology for that reason. That doesn't mean I hate all Catholics. Not all Catholics are fundamentalist. Not all Catholics believe that what the Pope and what the Pope's done is right, etc. And I can still like the individual Catholic without, whilst still opposing the ideology which they're a part of. I may respond to some of her other points in another video, but to be honest, I really can't be bothered to listen to any more of her right now.
Once again, this is not that she is yelling and calling somebody fuckface and telling them to shut the fuck up because they disagree. All signs point to she was getting that angry because they were putting words in her mouth. And
what are you talking about? She had a piece of paper in her hand which she was reading from. So unless she knew that somebody was going to say something to her the next day and she's psychic, and then decided to type that out before she went, then no, that wasn't as a response to something, that was something which she had prepared anyway and was reading from. You are flat out 100% wrong.
And then another greater context is missing from this whole thing isn't necessarily what comes before or after certain clips in the video, but rather the greater context of the incident of somebody pulling a fire alarm to shut down a guest speaker on a Canadian university campus. Now, TJ can probably be forgiven for not knowing this, but right now there's a very serious discussion going on about Canadian universities and demonstrators shutting people down, because it's happened quite a lot, and it's not predominantly a feminist thing. Many guest speakers have been shut down. I did a video on a guest speaker who was shut down. Ann Coulter was shut down a few years ago. To the conclusion that somebody would pull the fire alarm to shut this guest speaker down and everyone else would start cheering for it because they're feminists ignores the greater context that this is happening all over Canada, and most of the time it's got nothing to do with feminism. Right now on Canadian university campuses there seems to be kind of just a permeating culture of if you don't like a guest speaker, be as obnoxious as you want, do whatever you want to shut him down, and that's definitely a problem, but it's not a problem that's particular to feminism.
I honestly don't care if other people have done it. If other people have done it, that doesn't make what the feminists did there any less wrong. And the example of Ann Coulter which you gave, could you have given a worse example? I couldn't imagine feminists having a problem with someone saying it would be a much better country if women didn't vote. That's a simple fact.
So with all of this in mind, it becomes kind of hard to take TJ's conclusion seriously when he says that this is simply the perfect microcosm for proving how modern-day feminism is just all about female supremacy and trying to shut down anyone who disagrees and anyone who gets in the way. Because, unfortunately, not only is the story severely twisted out of context, but it's also not significant enough. None of this is significant enough. None of the feminist frequency and the dongle gate and that one chick who quoted that one chick who shot Andy Warhol in the head, and the shit with the fake jewelry that I already pointed out how Thunderfoot kind of twisted that. And
at this point I'm just wondering how much evidence is required before people will actually see through what feminism is actually for. And yeah, as I've said before, yes, there's moderate feminists, yes, there may be lots of them. But when it comes to the people who influence public and private policy, the people who run the universities, the people who organise protests, they are almost exclusively radical or justify the radicals' behaviour with their silence. Now, I think TJ has become a lot more anti-feminist since he's been on Tumblr. There's a lot of feminists on Tumblr, and they are completely and utterly crazy. Even people who I thought were moderate, like Lacey Green, she seems to be increasingly being influenced by them, talking about rape culture and patriarchy. She reblogged the Enliven Project, which claims that out of every 499 for every 499 rapes, there's only one false accusation. Now, that thing, it's been thoroughly debunked. I don't see how anyone can believe that who's got any level of critical thinking whatsoever, which, you should kind of expect from somebody like Lacey Green, really. And that's been reblogged over 100,000 times just on Tumblr. I mean, that's not a trivial amount. And I don't think that most people who reblog that are bad people. I think they're just deluded idiots. And like I've said, that doesn't make it any better. Same with religion. If somebody drowns their child because they think it's going to save them from hell, the fact that they did it they did it for what they thought was a good reason has no bearing on reality. And the people who are publishing these intentionally biased studies, they are doing it with politics in mind. They want to reduce the standard of evidence to basically make it far easier for people to be locked up for crimes they didn't commit. And if you still think that nobody's going to be going to end up in prison because of it, 75% of the people released by the Innocence Project were there because of false rape or false sexual assault accusation. So just how much evidence do I need to provide?
And I'm not really gonna try to defend or attack or even critique feminism in any way, because, as I've said before, my personal viewpoint is that feminism is just too broad a category that represents too wide a spectrum of ideas for me to really say feminism is this, feminism is that.
Indeed, I agree. Feminism is a very, very broad set of beliefs, and any two feminists will have different beliefs about something, blah blah blah. There's all sorts of groups: the sex positives, the independent feminists, radical feminists, the super duper radical feminists, etc. But that's kind of missing the point. I think that's one of the things which makes feminism so dangerous. It's very, very difficult to criticise when there's such a wide range of beliefs, and trying to criticise feminism, you then get the moderates being like, oh, I don't believe that. But no, when it comes to criticising an ideology, you criticise the effect which it has on society. You criticise the people right at the top. If I was to criticise Chick-fil-A and say that it's a homophobic organisation, it's completely 100% irrelevant if 99% of their staff aren't homophobic. The people at the bottom, the people who are the cashiers, and maybe even middle managers and that kind of thing. No, it's the person at the top which matters, and the person at the top of Chick-fil-A sends money to a homophobic organisation, and that makes Chick-fil-A a homophobic organisation. What the people at the bottom are doing is irrelevant, it's the people at the top, and the same when it comes to feminism.
But at the very least, I'm hoping that people are kind of noticing that there's a pattern occurring here, primarily by The Amazing Atheist and Thunderfoot. And for one thing, I don't think it's a secret that two channels that have actually really not gotten along with each other in the past are both doing several videos now with the identical naming trope of feminism versus blah.
What are you implying there? That they're working together in this in secret? The two channels which didn't like each other are now magically getting together to destroy feminism. That seems absurd. I think that it's quite probable that TJ simply copied the title format because it's simple and it works. Possibly could be a coincidence, though probably not. But I think it's quite a stretch to assume anything other than TJ simply copied him.
See, I'm not going to try to say that everybody should think one thing or think another thing about feminism, because, make up your own damn minds. But I'm perhaps suggesting that maybe The Amazing Atheist and Thunderfoot have not become the best sources for helping you do that. Because, for one thing, the fact that they're plucking these events out of relative obscurity kind of indicates that they most definitely are trying to construct a narrative, and the fact that they're further distorting them and presenting a very one-sided viewpoint of all of them further establishes that they're most definitely trying to create a narrative. This
Elevatorgate, Donglegate, Tropes versus Video Games, Atheism Plus, these all became well known in the skeptic community well before TJ and Thunderfoot got involved. They are hardly plucked from obscurity. On some of these issues, there is a very clear right and wrong, and I don't see how any rational person could look at any of those examples I just gave objectively and come to a different conclusion. Now, seeing as how you butchered quite a lot of this video, I really don't think you've shown how they're trying to construct a narrative at all, though I haven't watched any of your other videos yet. Hopefully I've opened your eyes a little on some of the points on this issue, and if you can admit the parts where you got things wrong, I would very much welcome a video response. So thanks for watching. Comment, rate, subscribe, send me video responses, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.